Okay, this is BBW. That's really funny. BWV 2.6. It's the second chorale that we're doing. This is much more difficult than the first one, but actually, this can be very instructive. We have to remember the goals of what we're trying to get out of this, and as maturing, sort of as a student, is to learn how to prioritize what we're looking at and how to isolate things that are beyond our scope at this point and not get lost in the weeds. All right, so I'm going to take you through this, and when it's stuff we can do, we're going to be in blue. And when it's stuff we should learn to ignore and go around or isolate, it'll be in red, okay? So the first thing that we want to do is we want to determine what key we're in. And the goal here in our second term of theory is to get chords and figured bass, key, and then eventually cadences and things like that, right? So let's just start off with some questions. I have one flat. So you might be thinking as a beginning student, are we in the key of F again? And let's investigate that for a minute. If we were in the key of F, then you'd be seeing F chords as your 1 chord and a C chords as your 5 chord. And we should check the cadences because that's the thing that ties everything up into a bow and says this is the key we're in. It's a structure. If we're looking at our first chord here, I've got a D and a D and an F sharp and an A. This is a D major chord here. That is not that. In fact, F sharp is as far away from the key of F as you could get. And you go, well, if it's not the key of F, is it the key of D minor? That's the relative major. And so we would see a D minor chord would be our 1. And then we'd see an A chord, that would be our 5. Well, it's closer. This is D major and not D minor. Maybe we're in the mode shift when we're in D major, okay? Possibly. So we'd start here and there's a D chord, and here at the first cadence is another D chord. It's identical actually. So that's a possibility, but we would like to see a bunch of A chords as well, right? And there's a G chord. Here's an A, but this is an F sharp A, C. It's not an A chord. There's another A, but it's A, G, B flat, and that doesn't look like one either. I don't see any A chords here. When I get to my next cadence here, I don't see an A chord as well. Initially, I don't think we're in D minor either. Doesn't sound that way, right? So the other thing we can do, and we're not at the answer yet, but you could play this and listen. Here's our first chord, and then it comes to here, and then here. And we're climbing. This is the next measure. Oops. And then here's the second to last before the fermata, and then here. Okay. It just does not sound like I'm in the key of F major or D minor, right? And if we get to the end here, we look, there's a G and a B flat and a D and a G. That's a G minor chord right there. And now I'm starting to go, well, do these have any relationships? Because that's a D chord, that's a D chord, and that's a G chord. And if you think about that, if G is 1, G, B flat, D, then D major and D dominant, because of the harmonic minor, would be the 5. In fact, if I look at these first 2 chords here, this feels like 5-1. And then as I go to the cadence, it's the reverse, 1-5. And if I go to this cadence at the end of the line and I play this here, this is a D F sharp A C, and the A and the D, that's a D dominant 7 chord. And then it goes to there. This is in the key of G minor. Now there may be some funky other chords in there that we have to use our red pen and go around, but the cadences, the context, the sound tells us that this is home, at least for right now. Also, this F sharp that keeps coming back, right there and there and there and there, is the harmonic minor leading tone. We've taken the F in the G minor scale, raised it up to F sharp to make it G harmonic minor, which gives us our dominant chords, the T-do, this sound, that pushes us back. Now, I know there's some other accidentals and things, but that's a very persistent F sharp along the way. I think we're in the key of G minor, okay? So I'm going to make it be a lowercase g so that I know I'm in minor. But if you want, you could go G and put a little min there. That would be fine as well, okay? You may find this a little more difficult to think in a minor key, but with practice, you'll get used to this as well, right? So D chord with the harmonic minor raised seventh is a 5 chord, and it's major. And G, B flat, G, D, that's a G chord, that's 1. And again, we're using lowercase for minor. And then this, oh, we're tempted to go, oh, it's another D chord because the F sharp looks the same, but there's no D actually here. In fact, it's F sharp, A, and C. F sharp would be my 7 chord, which is a pseudo 5, right? So there's 7. It's diminished. And the A, or the third, is in the bass, so it's 7 diminished 6. And you will hear me say again and again that diminished triads like to be in first inversion. Okay, and this is a pseudo 5 chord. It likes to go to 1, and look, G, B flat, and D. It's another 1 chord. It's in first inversion, so we put the 6 there. All right, here's this case where we have 2 notes. Either one could be part of the stack here. Maybe none of them, but that's very unlikely. And if we look here, we've got a B flat and a D. And we've got this right here. It's a G. And if you don't read that quickly, you do need to review your notes. Analysis gets exponentially more difficult if you don't read the notes, whether they're ledger lines or a certain clef or something like that. It just makes your life miserable. That means that this is likely not the chord tone. The A is going to clash with that, and the A is going to clash with the B flat. But the G is already in the chord structure that's there. I'm going to play this chord for you so you can hear. There's my A, there's my G, there's my B flat, and there's my D. And if you listen, that's nice, and this is not until it gets to there and resolves. This is my non-chord tone right there. Again, in the future, we'll come back and revisit these and talk about what kind of non-chord tone it is. But I have a G, right? And a B flat and a D, right? G, B flat, D. Well, that's just a 1 chord, isn't it? It can put 1, or I could just put 5-3 for right there, or both, because we go back to root position. Normally, you wouldn't include 5-3, but we're trying to tell ourselves that it just came off of a first inversion, so we'll write this in to remind ourselves. Okay? D, D, F sharp, A. That's a 5 chord. Now, often with this, we just call this a non-chord tone, and its origins is a non-chord tone. But this is a 5 chord, and this is the place we're most likely going to find a 5-7. In other words, a 7 on the top of the chord. And if you go D, F sharp, A, C, that's my 7th right there. So at this point, it's 6. And then with that, it's 6-5, because the third's in the bass. And this is the figured bass for if you have a 7th chord with the third in the bass. 5 likes to go to 1, right there. And then this is 5 exactly like this right there. This is the 5, is at your cadence. And although we're not going to talk about why, we call that a half cadence when you cadence on the 5. Okay? Now, let's just do this. We're not going to talk about that. I will, but you don't need to understand that. Or this one here, because they're weird chords. This is a Neapolitan chord. Second-year students looking at this video will go, oh, Neapolitan chord, cool. This is a 7 diminished of 5. I'll talk about them later, but let's just go around them for now, okay? All right, so D, D, F sharp, A, there's my C. This is a 5-7, right? And honestly, if you're a first-year student in second term, we haven't talked about all this stuff, that's the right thing to do. Just go like, I'll ask about that in class. You'll get points for being clever, spending an extra hour on this when you should be practicing your instrument, you know. Okay, anyhow, Here's that other C sharp that we, C sharp, E, G, B flat. It's the same as that chord there. And again, it's a 7, diminished 7 of 5, but we're not going to talk about that right now. And then we have another D, F sharp, A, C. So it's a 5, 7, but the third's in the bass, so 6, 5 right there, right? And that's going to come down to a G and a B flat and a D. That's my 1 chord, right? Then I've got my D, F sharp, A, C, and another A, and the D's through there. This is a 5, 7 chord, and this is a 1 chord right there. Makes perfect sense as a first line phrases in the key of G minor. And you might ask, like, why didn't they just put 2 flats here to begin with? Remember, these are chorales that are part of a longer set of, like, it's bookended with other music around it. In fact, I think what we're going to find is this is a D minor piece. It starts in G minor and then changes, and we'll talk about why in a minute. But and then at the end, it's on a D major chord, and we'll talk about that too. Well, it's because they didn't want it to end sadly. By the way, this is called an authentic cadence. There are qualifiers about whether it's perfect or imperfect, but not for today. All right, second line. Well, it starts on a G chord, G, B flat, D, G. So we'd call this 1. I just want to point something out here. F, not sharp. F, not sharp. F, not sharp. I'm seeing a lot of not F sharps until like later on over here. And there's a lot of F's in there. And C sharp, not there, but C sharp. Okay, these are starting to feel less like a G minor scale and more like something else. Okay, let's take a look at what our cadence is right here. Okay, so remember that your cadence is going to probably be on a 1 or a 5 chord. This is an A, C sharp, E, and G. That's an A major chord. Are we in the key of A major? Well, then we should see a bunch of E major chords or E dominant 7 chords around it. I'm not seeing that. This is a G, B, D, and D, right? Right? D, A, D, F. Not an abundance of 5 chords. Now, if this is the 5 chord, however, and 5 chords tend to be major, right, dominants, then the 1 chord would be D, right? Now that starts to make some sense here, right? Because if I'm in the key of D minor, then I'm going to see some D minor chords like D, F, A right there, and also D, F, A right there. And many times, because it's D minor, we will see a C sharp because the harmonic minor scale takes that 7th C degree up a half step to make it a leading tone, to make our 5 chords want to push and our 7 chords want to push to the 1. And look, C sharp to D, C sharp to D, C sharp, right? To D. So I got a sneaky suspicion we're in the key of D minor, although he doesn't let you know that right away. But as soon as we hit to here, you'll hear this leading tone kick in. So if you want to get really technical, you could say I'm in the key of G minor like this, and then I shift to D minor afterwards. Or you could just say I'm in the key of D minor for this. I think so. I mean, our ears won't know it immediately, but as soon as we get in here, you'll hear D as home, and then you hit the 5 chord right there. So this would be a 4 in the key of D minor. You got to shift gears now and think differently. Okay, and that would make this be an A, C sharp, and an E, and an A. That's my 5 chord, right? D, F, A, right? So now I'm going 5 in first inversion, 6 right there. C sharp's from the harmonic minor, making this a major chord. 5 likes to go to 1, and we have 1. Here's my A, C sharp, and E. That's my 5 right there. Now, I guess this could be a 7, right? Because that's the most common place we're going to find a 7. You could have blocked it out and said, no, 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 I don't believe in you. You're just a passing note. It is a passing note. It just happens to also be the 7 on the 5 chord, and they get special considerations. If you want to get really fastidious, you could call this the 7th, which is the lowest note at this point, and give yourself a 2 for inversion. 7th in the bass, right? Here's my D, F sharp, and A. This is a D chord, right? Or not F sharp, just F, sorry. It's a 1 chord, and the third's in the bass, right? I think, I don't know, this is like a D and an E and an E and an F. It's not quite a chord. I think we're just going to call those passing tones. Okay, and here's my 1 chord again, right? It's just going from inversion to root position. I think this is a passing tone. It doesn't have to be C sharp because it's not taking us back to the 1 chord, right? C sharp is there to raise us T do, right? And this one's going away from it, so that's why you have the natural minor, or the melodic minor descending. It's just the same as the natural minor. Then we have a G and a B and a D and a D. It's a G chord, but remember we're in the key of D, so this is 4, and the B flat is the third of the chord, so 6 right there. 4 loves to step into the 5 chord right there, like that, okay? 5, we would call that a half cadence. All right. It gets problematic here because it's going to waffle back and forth between these two keys now. And let me show you what I mean by that. It's going to start here on the D chord, like you'd expect, right? D, F, D, A, right? Looks like it's going to be a 1 chord. It's not dominant to the key of G minor because that would be an F sharp. And then we get some gobbledygook here. These are funny things, which I'm going to put a red pen around and make you just ignore it for now. It's actually kind of complicated. It's cool, but it's complicated. And but then when we get over to here, you kind of got the D chord set up here, but then there's a B flat above it, making this kind of an augmented triad. Again, leave it. Just look at the edges, okay? So I don't know. I'm not sure. Well, that's not true, but you know, we're going to just put a bubble around that. We're certainly going to put a bubble around that. They could just be passing tones and around this, and we'll talk briefly about that. Here's another E flat, and it's possible that if we're in the key of, if we're in the key of G minor, then the E flat makes sense, right? Because G minor is B flat and E flat, and so, and then on the way up, it would be like harmonic or natural or melodic minor up and then harmonic minor down. It's possible. Okay, so we'll at least look at that, right? But let's just have a look at the things that make sense here. When we come to the cadence right here, so coming off of the cadence, this is a 1 chord, but really, or are we back in the key of G minor? And if that's 1, this would be like a minor 5, and then going on, right? But let's have a look here, because this is definitely a G minor chord here, right? I'm going to put myself in G minor. This is a D, D, F sharp, A. That's my 5 chord right there, okay? Again, I think we're just going to say, this is weird. When I have a live teacher and not a video, I'll ask questions about that. But let's see what else we can get out of this then. G, B flat, D. This is another G chord, 1, 6. See, the structures are in place. This here is very strange because if that weren't there, then this would be a D chord right there, which would be my 5 chord and then the 2, and that makes sense, right? So maybe that's acting as a non-chord tone or a 5 augmented. 5 augmented is an interesting idea. If you go look in your Koska Payne textbook, they'll have an explanation of that. But even then, they cast doubt on whether that exists. But do you see how it quickly frames up a cadence in G minor? We'll call that an authentic cadence right there. Okay. Let's keep going. Like I'm seeing F sharps. I know that's an F natural, but this is like my natural minor scale. This is weird. And then this is strange, taking us to the end to a D chord. I don't know that we're ending in a half cadence. You could maybe hear it that way, or you could hear it as a Picardy third, but let's get there in a minute. So G, that's my 1 chord right there, right? Here's my 5 chord, D, D, F sharp, A, some first inversion, right? Here's my G chord right here, G, B flat, D. Okay, we'll call that a passing note. Here's a weird one, E flat, C, oh, maybe not. C, E flat, G. Wouldn't that be a 4 chord? We're in the key of G minor, C minor chord. It's in first inversion. Here it is. Again, this would be so much happier for us if it was just not C on the bottom and not something else on the top. But I think what we can call this is, first off, we're gonna say you don't really need to know this yet. But if you call that a non-chord tone, right? Then I have a G, B, D, F, which is the G7 chord, which is the 5, 7, in this case 6, 5, of C minor, which is the chord we came from and the chord we're going to. So, you know, in absolute terms, that's a 5, 6, 5 of 4, because 4 is C minor in this key. And then, I guess I shouldn't have spent so much time there. C minor is 4, right? And this is 1 right there. And then this is kind of weird. This is an A, C sharp A, and a G. There's my E right there. This feels like an A7 chord right there, which should set me up for a D chord over there, right? So maybe we end in D, because this is 5 to this right there, and that's how we end the section. Yeah, it depends on how you want to hear this. I'll play this at the end for you right here from this spot right here. If I look over, looking away, there's my C minor chord right there, right? And then it goes to the, you know, the G chord, you know, and then it goes to this strange A7, right? And we really want it to do this. That's what you want it to do. You want it to come back to D minor, right? But instead it goes, I'll play from here. You've got, right? And then it's got this F sharp in there, right? And it doesn't feel like a half cadence because this is setting up as a 5-1. Right? So you know, it's like the surprise we changed key, right? I feel like this is kind of like this, and it's also kind of like this because it's important because in the piece. But if you think about this as your 5-7 in D minor, right? Okay. Then this here would be my 1 chord, but it's major. And I think there's a couple reasons for this, but the biggest one is that aesthetically at the time, especially, remember this is a song for church, right? That they didn't want these minor things to end on a sort of negative sounding note, and so it was very common. And I think as we do some other chorales, you'll find this is true, that although it should be ending in the minor, in this case D minor, because that's where we've been, right? And it's also suggestive of the key that we've been in from the key signature and how we cadenced there, right? And what we're in here. But at the end, they switch it. Now, from a theory point of view, we call this mode mixture, meaning that you go and say, well, I'm in the minor right now, but I'm gonna go over to the major mode and I'm gonna borrow the 1 chord as opposed to the minor mode, which would have been that right there. And I'm just going to come and shunt it in there. We have a popular term for that called a Picardy third, which I don't know the origins of, honestly. I should look that up, be curious. But what it means is that they borrowed the 1 chord from the major and stuck it on there for a happy ending. And that's kind of it. All right.